Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. The Casella landfill has been in the news lately. It continues to grow, and not everybody's happy. Our guest today is Charlie Pronto, and he is leading a charge to have a little more accountability for the landfill. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Now, do you know the producer of the show, Todd Pronto?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I run into him every once in a while.
Yeah, you ran into him for the first 18 years of his life, more or less. He's one of your three boys.
Yeah, he is. He's my oldest, and he would tell you the best, but
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, usually that's the way usually that's the way the oldest kid is. They think the world kind of revolves around them, and then later on, like I'm the middle child, so we all know the middle child. We're always left out.
Well, the joke in our house is that I always said that Todd was perfect to pick on the other two. So,
Right.
so that's the joke. Todd's the perfect one.
So you've been kind of leading the charge, and you finally got somebody to listen that, there's something seriously wrong with having a growing mountain on this, side of our lake.
Yeah. I tried to lead the charge about 30 years ago, and there's somebody that you may be familiar with, a guy named John Wheeler.
No, Wayne Wheeler.
Wayne Wheeler.
That's his brother.
That's why Wayne Wheeler. And we were two of the voices against the landfill, allowing a lined landfill into into Coventry on the side of the Black River and the wetlands 30 years ago, but we didn't have a whole lot of backing. And
people looked at you guys like, well, you're trying to stymie progress.
Yeah, where else are we going to do this? This is a wonderful thing. But I guess I wish more people had the intuition that we had back then about what's going on, because now, probably read it in the papers, but now there's a few issues with it. The landfill, the old online part of the landfill that's still there is leaking. Casella calls it migrating. They hate the word leaking, but it's leaking, and we've always known that it's been putting arsenic and lead and a few other things at higher degrees, and Newport's had to deal with that even in their drinking water testing. But now there's a new chemical that is starting to hit the fan, kind of. And it's a PFAS, which PFOAs is one of the chemicals in that group, and that's where they had all the trouble in Bennington in 2016 with the water wells being produced. Well, lo and behold, this landfill is leaking. It's testing positive for that. And then we find out that the liners that are supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread, there are exceedances of PFOAs down gradient from one of their wells, and that's just one of them, and it's just a matter of time that they all will be doing that. Right. So it's pretty scary. I mean, we've got air pollution there. If you talk to anybody that lives up on Lawson Ridge or on the Coventry side.
Well, I live on Pine Hill.
Yeah.
Which is across the bay. Now, granted, I don't smell it all the time, but if the wind is right, I certainly do. And the people up the road, which has a clear shot.
Yep.
So even Derby resident, Derby, Coventry, and Newport.
Yeah, it depends which way the wind's blowing.
Now, do you think, is that because to tell you the truth is, I didn't notice the odor until recent years. Like sometimes, downtown Newport, they're trying to redevelop Newport, but some days it smells like a landfill. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Well, I mean, I live on Memphis-Magog Views, so
Right.
I'm looking at the South Bay because I'm on the left-hand side of the road up there. So if I crank my head to the right, I left some trees up to kind of block it, but I can see the dump. So yeah, I can smell it.
Right. Yeah. Why do you think, going back in time, why do you think we were so, maybe, I don't know if the word was eager to accept everybody else's refuge or not?
Well, I don't think. I mean, I've been involved in this for way back, and then not. I skipped about 20 years, and now I'm back in the forefront again. But at the time when the solid waste division set up districts around the state, and there are several of them, they were telling us that this landfill, which was done by Waste USA, it was not done by Casella's,
Right.
was going to be one of a regional landfill, and everybody was going to have one,
Right.
every district. And that turned out not to happen.
Right.
And I think we just lost sight of it growing and continuing. And I was shocked to see that we're getting 30% of the trash that comes here is coming from out of state, everywhere in New England. And it's the worst of the stuff. It's all contaminated soil, asbestos, coal ash, medical waste. I mean, there's just real nasty stuff in there. So I don't think anybody knew that it was going to be this size.
Because I think the idea of the lined landfill was a good thing. You know, maybe just the location, because you're probably a bit aware of the history of dumps in Vermont, in the sense of, like, one of Derby's dumps. It's hard to imagine. It was right over the bank from, like, the entrance to Shaw's. They used to just dump it over the bank. Newport's landfill before my time was in Gardner Park.
Gardner Park.
And they burned it. Then when I was a kid, they had to burn and dump over on Coventry Street.
Where the recycling is
right.
now.
So it isn't that the idea of a lined landfill is a bad thing, because overall, a lined landfill is a huge improvement. But the location of it seems so...
Well, the problem is nobody knew. I mean, the lined landfills were a new thing around here.
Right.
So they certainly sounded better than open trash and burning it and having it on the side of the lake. So, and Charlie Netto had the dump over there, and so that was the natural location for Waste USA to come in and put a landfill. The problem is we have emerging chemicals now. Our trash is not what it used to be.
No, that's it.
There is stuff. PFASs come from anything that's waterproof, basically. So Scotchgard,
Right.
Gore-Tex, stuff they use in clothing, Teflon. I mean, and there's lots of, I could go on and on, but a lot of clothing stuff, and they just didn't know anything about it. And it's a relatively new. They call it an emerging contaminant, which basically means they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Excuse me, but I mean they just don't. They just don't know anything other than that it's a carcinogen, causes cancer, birth defects, skin rashes, lung irritations. It's really bad stuff, and they don't know how to treat it. And that's why I got involved again.
Right. On a lighter note, do you remember what we used to do at the dump in the 1980s and early 90s? We used to go to the car races.
We did.
Charlie Netto and family hosted. They had the Can-Am Speedway, and it was a great time. And as I've written all about the Can-Am Speedway, and and I interviewed Charlie when he was still alive, and he just thought it would be a great thing to have a speedway there, because what it did was it allowed, he was a real entrepreneur, Charlie was.
Sure was.
And the thing is, if you had a car breakdown, he would let you go out and he'd sell a part off the vehicle so you could run out and put it back. And the thing is, people had so much fun, because if it was raining out, a sinkhole might want to swallow up your car, or and if it was dry, it was just this dust storm. And looking back at it, that was so insane. We used to go to the dump and to go to the races.
For entertainment.
But it was so much fun.
We used to shoot rats too.
That's what I heard. Yeah, that's. But yeah, we used to go to the dump. I think maybe 1992 that it closed, something like that. And so I like to laugh. I like to tell people that's what we used to do at the dump. We went to the car races, and but they.
I wish we were still going to the car races there.
I don't think Charlie ever, even though he was a great entrepreneur, he was doing everything,
Yep.
and I don't think he ever envisioned though that there would be a mountain over there.
No, I think he'd be real disappointed at what's going on today.
Right.
Biggest thing is, I mean, I knew Charlie a little bit. He loved the lake, I can tell you that,
Right.
and he wouldn't have anything to do with what's going on now. I mean, we're polluting in the lake.
Yeah, I don't think Charlie really. I don't think it was a wise idea to have it there back then, but I don't think he knowingly, went out to do any harm.
Well, it's not the cardboard
Right.
and the tin cans and the rubber tires and
Right.
the stuff that we used to put into the dump. Everything's plastic now. Everything's got treated. There's chemicals to cover this. There's lead-based paints and stuff on all kinds of stuff. There's preservatives
Right.
for everything. And all of that stuff is coming back to haunt us now because it was all great science, they thought, and now it's coming back to haunt us. And we didn't have that stuff. We didn't have that stuff 40, 50 years ago.
Right. I've been going to these meetings without saying a word. Just throughout the years, I went to the recent one at the Gateway, and just because since I record history, I do believe that at some point our descendants are going to say, what were these people thinking?
Yeah, were they nuts?
Yeah, and
I agree.
so I just go, I listen, but I also noticed you're not shy about you don't sit back there, and you really keep them on their toes. The state too.
I don't think anybody's accused me of being bashful ever. That's probably not a thing, but it's a fight though. Yeah, I'm not afraid to. I mean, the state at that meeting you're talking about at the Gateway Center, I was reading information that I had taken off from their website, and the head of the solid waste division, a guy named Chuck Schwerer, looked at me afterwards. He said, "Where'd you get that information from?"
No, it was right during the meeting.
During the meeting, and I sat back and I said, "I got it off your website."
Yeah, I thought that was quite the moment where he questions your knowledge, and then you say, "Hey."
Yeah, I got it off your website. Would you like a copy of it? And he didn't really like that. Actually, he kind of chuckled. He looked at me, which wasn't on the camera, and he said, "Oops."
Right.
And I said, "Yeah, oops." Kathy Jamison, the other woman that was there, when asked how much it costs to put a line landfill in. Now, granted, these are solid waste people who are in charge of putting solid waste districts together. That's their job. Right. Of what it costs, because they had heard this guy asked a question of $500,000 to put a liner in, and she said she had no idea. Right. I mean, I was stunned that she had no idea.
Right. So. Do you think there's a bit of a social thing that, that they're so driven to keep it here too, because we are in a, of course the landfill is going to stay there, but the expansion, do you think part of it is because we are in an economically depressed region?
Oh, absolutely. Because it takes money and to fight the state. I mean, and anything they can dump up into the Northeast Kingdom, I mean, that's better for the rest of the state, and we're poor. We get windmills, whether you like them or not, wind towers on our mountaintops, because they go to the poorest communities. Right. And entice them with money to put something in that community. Right. You try to do that. Try to get a wind turbine on Lake Champlain. See what happens to you.
Yeah, no, you see that happening constantly. Have you gotten any blowback from people? Because Coventry, let's be fair, is Coventry gets a really good deal from having that land, even though it's just on the very tip of Coventry and everything is Newport on the downhill. But Coventry taxpayers, they get a good deal. Have you gotten any blowback for your fighting?
It's really funny. 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 I've talked to selectmen
Right.
in Coventry, and I've talked to a lot of people in Coventry, and not one of them has told me that that dump there is a good idea. They're all concerned because they're all people in the area. They know the lake is precious.
Right.
Their air quality is precious. Their drinking water is becoming a problem in Coventry. I mean, people know, and surprisingly, I have not heard one comment that didn't support what we were doing. Not one, other than from people that work at Casella.
Right. You know, not to say this is going to happen with Casella, because I don't think it is. It isn't going to happen like poof. But then there's the people who remember the 1950s when, and I know it's totally unrelated, but where we had a bit of an ecological disasters when the Portland pipeline broke and dumped in tens and tens of thousands of gallons of crude oil, and my father still remembers the whole bay being crude oil. And so I think sometimes when you have a long view, now granted that is not the way anything's going to happen with Casella. It isn't going to be poof like that. But I think sometimes when you understand history and you've watched things, you understand that you need to you need a little bit of vision for the future as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody now around the country
Right.
is realizing that they had no idea what these PFAS stuff are doing, and so I mean, I don't know. They probably were doing the best thing that they thought they could do at the time, but now that they know it's not the best thing to do, this is the time to change it.
Right. So what are we as people, as in with our habits, what can we do to actually stem the tide of what's going in the landfill?
Yeah, well, obviously, recycling and composting.
Right.
There is, if you were at that meeting, there was a lady from the Consumer Law Foundation that had done a study, and 66%, about 2/3 of our trash that goes into the landfill right now could be either recycled, repurposed, or composted.
Right.
And the state and the nation have to start getting behind that. It's a little bit of work for everybody, but my wife and I have been recycling for 22 years. It's not a big deal. Once you get used to doing it, it's just a habit.
And you know what is being a good old Vermonter myself is I've always repurposed everything.
Yeah.
Just about everything has more than one purpose for it. And am I perfect on recycling? Absolutely not. But I'm pretty good at repurposing things. You'd be amazed at what I can repurpose.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I just think that's got to be part of the discussion going forward.
Right.
The problem we have in this area right now is we've got to stop this from expanding.
Right.
Because they're looking for another 10 years. Their proposal's another 20 years. And then beyond that, the state of Vermont has no other site planned, no other means of waste planned for the state of Vermont, even after 20 years. They're perfectly happy with sending it to Northeast Kingdom. We need to rise up. That's what our group's doing. Right. And tell them we don't want it anymore.
A lot of people who don't, like I heard some people who actually support the landfill. And I understand people say, well, it's better than the alternative, as in the sense of a lined landfill. But people will say, yeah, but we shouldn't be dumping as much in. Well, a lot of that stuff there, as you said, isn't. There's a lot coming from outside the area as well.
Oh, there's terrible stuff coming from outside. Construction debris, asbestos coming from Boston, New York, New Jersey, all over Massachusetts, Connecticut, all over New England.
I do think though, one of the reasons that you've gained some steam this time, and I'm going to give you a little credit, is especially with the city council, because you're talking about a council that can't even agree on what goes on a sign coming into Newport. You managed to lasso them all to agree 100% with you, and now you have stopped the
leachate.
Right, being processed because.
Yeah.
Why did they choose that? Is it because they now understand that it's not really processed well there?
Yeah. Well, I think facts matter.
Right.
And I believe everybody on the council really cares about the community, or they wouldn't be serving the community.
Okay.
So, and that was my push, and it didn't really surprise me that I got unanimous support from the council because it was the right thing to do.
Right.
But this leachate that I got them to stop taking, what it is the Canadians call it garbage juice. And basically, I'll try to do this really quick. It's when the garbage decomposes,
Right.
this liquid forms at the bottom. It's drawn out by well pumps,
Right.
and then it's put into tankers, and it's brought down to wastewater treatment facilities to be put through to be treated, supposedly.
Right.
That's the thing, and then it's dumped out into the lake. And what they found out about this, especially the PFAS and this PFOAs, which is the really bad stuff, is that there's way above normal exceedances of PFASs in this leachate. And the wastewater treatment facilities anywhere in the state of Vermont were not designed to treat it out. The Agency of Natural Resource will readily tell you that it's not capable of treating it out. So what happens is when the leachate is going through there, it takes out some of the stuff that it was designed, the organic stuff that it was designed to do, but it can't take out the chemicals, and that in its content total is dumped into the lake.
But I was utterly astonished. I guess I don't know what I was thinking, but I remember hearing the number of gallons that went through. What was it basically?
Well, Casella, the landfill, and this blew my mind, which is part of the reason. The reason I'm doing this is because as I started looking into it, it just scared me to death. And I love the area. That's why I'm here. They produce 12 million gallons a year out of that. Newport was taking 4,800,000 gallons of that because that's what their permit required them to do. Back in May, the city manager wrote a letter to the Agency of Natural Resources saying they would like to take more because they were getting paid $185,000, 4 cents a gallon, to process this stuff through there. I think when the council found out that the PFAS stuff was in there,
Right.
not able to treat it out, it was the same bad stuff that was happening in Bennington, and we were poisoning our lake. They just made the right decision regardless of the money, and they did the right thing.
Yeah, but and I think with you having been the city's former mayor, I kind of think even though you haven't been a mayor for many years, you kind of know, the hoops to jump through, and you kind of know the lingo, so you're able. And you're also retired now, so you got a little time on your hands.
I am, not as much as I'd like to have, but
Right.
I mean, yeah, maybe. I probably. I also president of the local ambulance service, and we put budgets together and we do stuff. So I've been doing that for 30 years, dealing with the city on a regular basis. But yeah, I think people know me. I'm not an activist, never have been.
Right.
This is pretty serious stuff, and
Yeah, because I don't see you out hugging trees all the time or anything.
No, I love the outdoors. If you follow my Facebook pages, that's what my wife and I love to do. So I'm a bit of a tree hugger, but I don't hug it enough so that nobody can use it.
I have actually talked to your son Todd, who is the producer of the show.
Yep.
Because I know you love to hunt.
I do.
And Todd would rather go out and catch himself a tofu burger
Yeah.
because he's a vegetarian. And I
Yeah.
said, you know, so I don't know if there's any like wild tofu or whatever, but he.
There's wild mushrooms.
Yeah, that's true
But,
too. Yeah, but if you eat the wrong stuff,
Yeah.
you're dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't think Todd hangs out at deer camp probably very much, but
No, he did when he was a kid, but I guess he decided he just didn't like it anymore.
right.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
You know, I
So-
have 3 boys. One of them hunts, the other 2 don't.
Right.
But-
So what do you? We only have a few more minutes left. Is what? So what's the future now? What's your next move? What or your group? Well, dump.
Dump.
What does it stand for?
Dump. Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. Dump was a phrase coined by some members of the group that started, and it stands for "Don't Undermine Memphremagog's Purity."
Okay.
So that's what it stands for. We've created an LLC so that we could do funding and have a checking account and be a legal entity, and that's what we did. But our next step is Act 250. We're going to fight it, the expansion there, and they deal with a lot more than just the leachate. I mean, we have got the city of Newport to stop taking it. So they're not dumping it in the lake anymore, but it's still leaking into the lake. And we've got a wetland there, we've got odor problems, we have traffic problems. There are a lot of problems, and the economic injustice of bringing it all to the kingdom. Hopefully we can win this battle at Act 250 and stop the expansion.
And this is an international fight.
It absolutely is. We've partnered with Memphremagog Conservation, Inc. Robert Benoit was at that meeting also at my invite, and I asked the mayor if I could bring him along. He said absolutely. The good thing about the council is they wanted the information. And he was there. They're a 1,200 member group, and they are part of our group now. They have joined with us. So we're gaining. We need a lot of work. Letters to the state, letters to your representatives, letters to the Act 250 Commission. Anything you can do, if anybody agrees with this, we could use all the help we could get.
Right. Okay, what are your final words?
Well, my final words is it's time not to lay back anymore and just allow this thing to continue happening. I don't think anybody was aware. I don't blame anybody. I just think this got out of hand. But now that we're aware of it, I hope people rise up. They support us. And if you can help us out, because we're pushing.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming on, and
Thank you.
keep up your work, and we'll see what happens.
Okay?
All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.